and welcome to the most excellent 80s movies podcast. It's the podcast where we crane kick our way through the movies of the 80s that we think we love or might have missed with these, our 2020 eyes, our modern takes, looking back to see whether or not the movies hold up. And today we're talking about The Karate Kid, a movie selection from 1984.
This is it. This is the end of the line. Telling me. Did I tell you about the pool here?
For Daniel LaRusso,
Is this the only pool you guys got?
the future seemed far from terrific.
This place is a dump. You should go back to New Jersey.
Hey, I know it's hard, but we're not quitters, are we?
Until he met the right girl.
She's beautiful. I say she's beautiful. I think she's beautiful. Is that your address?
You got it.
But that only angered the wrong guy.
You know, I was time for 9:30. Definitely. You gotta be nuts.
And his troubles really began.
Down, push it. Now you're gonna pay.
Then, in one man, he found a teacher
I promise, teach karate.
and a friend.
Fighting always last answer.
How did you do that?
Oh no. First time. Power, whole body. Make a perfect picture.
How do I know if my picture's the right one?
If come from inside you, always right on. Lesson about the balance, not just karate, lesson for whole life. White drink.
So I won't have to fight.
Hey, Karate Kid, let's take a move. Points or no points, you're dead meat.
I don't have much of a cheering section. You got me.
In the end, it will be in Daniel's hands. In his body. And most of all, in his mind.
Concentrate, focus, power. Remember balance. No mercy.
Columbia Pictures presents The Karate Kid.
Hey, what kind of belt do you have?
Canvas. You like? JC Penney, 398.
Man alive, they really give you everything you need in the trailers of the 80s.
They are very descriptive of the movie, and they just assume that you're going to see the movie after you learn the entire plot.
The entire thing. So I'm Christy Lenz, director of NCT Phoenix Improv, comedian for this podcast. And with us, as always, is Nathan.
Good evening.
Hopefully.
Am I supposed to introduce myself?
Yes.
Hi. How's it going?
That's Nathan Blackwell, filmmaker, and apparently sometimes shy person.
What?
And also, voice that you heard is our favorite guest, author Craig Michael Curtis.
He's in the top 3 of the guests, at least. Or top 4.
I made the top 20. Hello,
Yeah.
I'm Craig Michael Curtis, and I'm introducing myself with a plum.
Excellent work. All right, Karate Kid. I'm going to assume that we all saw this movie when we were very young.
Oh, yeah.
You assume wrong. I did not see this movie when I was young.
What?
No, I never got around to seeing it, and it just became part of pop culture to the point where I felt like I'd seen it, but I'd never actually seen the movie. All I really needed to do was see the trailer, clearly. But yeah, I never. The first time I saw it was last week.
Yeah, you know what?
Mind blown. What?
I think that it is definitely one of those movies. I mean, there are movies that like Rambo, which we all watched together. Which I never sat down and watched the movie with my face, but it was so much in pop culture. I feel like I knew it, right? So I could see this being one of those for sure. Wow. Well, that definitely changes things.
Yeah, this movie for me, so I was like, I don't know, 8 years old when this came out. This was like everything. This was like the movie of the year, you know. And so it was a big deal, and it was a big deal for a lot of people that I knew. And then because of this movie, there was this huge wave of people learning karate. I feel like the fact that we've got karate dojos in strip malls now has a lot to do, not solely with this movie per se, but I think it has a lot to do from this movie, you know?
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, this movie was the thing, and it was the thing for the longest time. And I think like wax on, wax off is so much a part of pop culture still.
Oh yeah, and then Mr. Miyagi himself as one of the top movie mentors, you know.
Yes. Oh, yes, absolutely. And he is perfection. Love Miyagi. But here's the thing about looking back at these movies is that you forget. This is one of those 80s movies where you're like, why is this movie a million years long? Like, just give me the part. Like, Danny and his mom are moving from New Jersey to California, and I feel like we had to watch their entire drive.
Oh yeah, watching it, like I said, watching it for the first time last week. I was shocked at how the pacing was in this movie, and like at the beginning, it reminded me a lot of the opening of Mac and Me, where it's a single mom taking her family cross country to go live in California now, and it's a new fresh start, and the kid they're kind of less enthusiastic, and California is just this weird land. I felt like, am I watching Mac and Me now? Because it feels very similar to the opening of that, and I was like, it doesn't. I had no idea it had so much more plot than the karate stuff, and I was like, get to the karate kidding.
Yeah, he's like, he's a fish out of water. He doesn't want to live in California. But I love that the mom is so positive. She's like, the place has a swimming pool. This is going to be amazing. Like, you're going to love it. And he's just like, I want to go home. Which is kind of, I felt like, out of character for the rest of it, because Daniel LaRusso is a sweet, good kid. He's a likable character, and that's one of the pieces of the movie that was, I think, easiest to fall in love with again this time around. Is like, I get why Elizabeth Shue, who is this sort of like preppy, rich, fancy, lots of bangs, a lot of blow drying happening in her world. She likes him, and it's because he's likable. Like, everybody else is kind of like, ew, what do you see in him? He rides a bike. Gross.
Everyone else is...
Maybe she's into fungus.
Yeah.
Everyone else is the more preppy rich kid, and she's more of the affluent girl next door, like
yes,
a more relatable rich kid.
Yes. And she immediately falls for him, but in every interaction, you get the feeling that, like, I would have fallen for this kid too. Which, like, we were talking about the movie Valley Girl, and how, like, I get that character, the Nicolas Cage romantic lead, is like, I get that you're telling me I'm supposed to fall in love with him, but he never seemed to, like, woo his lady the way that Daniel LaRusso in this movie is. Just like, he is cute, he's charming, he's funny, he's friendly, he's, everything you would want the cute new boy from the East Coast to be. Anyway, nobody else other than Elizabeth.
But that's great, and that's I obviously had a different point of view of feeling like Daniel, feeling like an outsider, putting myself into his shoes, and just, I mean, I think every kid growing up feels like the outsider, because even if they do have siblings, even if they do have role models, they still feel like an alien, you know?
Yeah.
And this very much is. So I feel like Karate Kid was for us kids and things like that, kind of our Rocky. Like Rocky was a huge deal, but this was Rocky for kids.
It's so Rocky. It's so Rocky.
I mean, it's the same director. It's the same director.
No,
John
I had
Avildsen.
no idea.
Yeah,
that makes perfect sense.
Yeah, but it's Rocky for kids, and kids were just as flipped out over this movie as adults were for Rocky. But it's very much kind of the same thing, but twisted into the kid experience of.
But down to the fact where he has to use his environment, right? Like he has to use the ocean and the painting the fence and wax on, wax off. Like he has to use real life.
The grassroots, pull himself up by the bootstraps, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, I mean, whereas Rocky felt like he had wasted his life, you know. He was in a dead end, you know. With Daniel LaRusso, you know, he was a new kid. In a new town, where he didn't, very East Coast, now in the West Coast, in the Valley, you know, feeling like an outsider, having no friends, with bullies.
Immediately hates him. Immediately, like he is subject to the most intense bullying.
Yeah, and and I don't feel like that's too unrealistic either. Like I didn't feel like it was, you know, sometimes you get very ham-fisted twists and like, oh, I don't like you, and to me it felt very true to the teenage experience, you know, especially when you had like one or two people like him, and then like the bullies dislike him, and then the guys who liked him don't like him anymore.
Exactly. You know? There's an isolation feeling because he makes a friend like
Freddie
as soon
Fernandez,
as he moves in, and then like let's go to the beach and hang out together, and then good, I'm making friends already. And then he actually meets the girl, and then like his new friend is like, hey, go talk to her, and that's all going well. And then the bully comes and basically humiliates him, and then not only does the clique of girls there kind of mock him at that point, but his new friends are like, oh, this guy's a loser, and they disappear from the story entirely from there on out. And he is isolated. He's the new kid. He's isolated, and he still has the bully. The bully's not going to, like, he did his thing and leave him alone. Now he's just going to keep picking on him, and so he feels. Then that's when he really gets into the whining. I really want to go home.
Yeah. And it's great also because like Ralph Macchio or Daniel LaRusso, he looks like a boy, and then all these bullies and all these other guys, they look like men, you know, even though they're all the same age, you know. They
are professional level bullies. These are artisanal bullies. Like these
and they're full on. The thing I really like about this movie is, for the most part, it has a very strong sense of realism, you know, not only with the way it's shot. There's sometimes longer shots, you know, it's not cut to hell like a lot of things are today, but you kind of feel like these are real people. I can't really remember anyone who doesn't feel like a real person, even like the mustache twisting you know, Cobra Kai main baddie Kreese. When you see that he is flouting his like military record along with all these trophies, you immediately sense a character of someone of who this character was, you know.
But but those characters are like out of 10. So I think Danny is really believable. His mom is really believable. Like, you know, Miyagi is wonderful.
Kind of variates between like very dry and like when we first meet Mr. Miyagi, like any kid meeting an adult, he's very intimidating. Like Mr. Miyagi is not very open to meeting other people. Like he does have these great beliefs, but he's still also kind of shut off. Like he's not particularly too friendly when he meets Daniel. He's actually kind of annoyed that anyone is bothering him, you know, and that feels like the child experience of adults, but it's also, you know, as we see in other parts of the movie, Miyagi has these other aspects that you would not see in a like I'm sure you did not see. I haven't seen it, but like the the adaptation with Jackie Chan that
I
they
saw
go
it.
down that route. Do they? So the stuff that they have later with Mr. Miyagi, that really gives him a more a sense of a full character, and I think there's one scene in particular that earned him the Oscar nomination that he got for this movie.
Yes, and so they do have that in the Jackie Chan version. The losing of his wife, he assembles and disassembles and reassembles, classic cars. Love all of that. But the thing about the Cobra Kai is so symbolic of like what the 80s vibe of everything is, because those dudes are, they
It was
start at a
Fully
10.
training academy.
Yeah,
It-
it was
yes.
be badass is the most important thing.
Only ever. You're not allowed to be anything except always the edgiest person. Like, fear does not exist in this dojo. Mercy does not exist in this dojo.
Mhm.
Nothing about you as a person other than your aggression and your rage is of value. And it's so freaking toxic. It is gross. And I hated it.
And you know what's great is that there was so much of that in 80s action heroes.
Yes. So much.
Like, Schwarzenegger in Commando, or like in Rambo, it's like the ultimate muscle man.
Yeah.
Now to be fair, Rambo had definitely, sensitivities, but it's so, in a lot of ways, Miyagi is such a counter, an antidote to the machoism of the 80s, and it's delivered in a realistic fashion and it's not done as, it's not meant to be as kind of like fortune cookies. Like, Mr. Miyagi legit doesn't care about all this machoism. He believes in
He's got nothing to prove.
Yeah, so there's a line in the movie that I never understood as a kid, not really, where it's like, if you're on one side of the road or the other side of the road, you're fine, but if you're in the middle, then you get squished like a grape.
Yeah.
And it's like, I don't quite understand that as a kid, but now as an adult, I finally understood that, which is, if you only go halfway with something, then you can't truly understand it. Like, you know just enough to be dangerous, but you don't actually comprehend the meaning of karate. You don't. It's like Daniel, until the end, was in the middle. Like, I'm going to learn karate to defend myself and to beat people up and to be a badass. Like, that was his goal for most of the movie. And Miyagi is saying, no, it's really more about enlightenment and balance and defense, and it really takes Daniel until the end of the movie to understand that. But if Daniel had not understood that, then he would have been treading in some of the same zone as these Cobra Kais, of just learning just enough karate that you can now use it to beat people up.
Yeah. I one of the things that I like, just, where my brain goes is like, what is this guy? We see so much of Miyagi in his life, and he finds a balance through his relationship with Daniel. And I'm just wondering, like, this Kreese guy, like, what is his home life like? Is he just always like, carbs do not exist in this kitchen. 2-ply toilet paper does not exist in this bathroom. Like, he can't possibly be any fun at parties.
Right.
And that's
he's all about self-inflation,
Yeah, and he is terrified of defeat. That's why he can't let go of the fact that Elizabeth Shue broke up with him before the movie started, and he sees her talking to another guy, and it's like, this cannot stand. This is like, this guy's defeating me in taking my old girlfriend.
Oh, with Johnny, yeah.
And it's such a bummer. And I do think, like, there's this alternate reality, right? Where, because when they attack Danny, in like what I remember as being one of the scariest scenes, and Craig, with your fresh take, you'll have to let me know, but when they are all dressed as
Skeletons.
and they're literally attacking him. And the bully adjacent bullies, like the beta bullies, are like, no mercy. I think there's an alternate reality where Miyagi doesn't show up in time, and like they kill Daniel, and then they all like go to prison.
It becomes like a Stephen King novel to where they keep a secret for 20 years.
Yes,
and then they all go to a cabin, and then it all comes out, and
and someone is picking them off one by one now that they're adults.
So Daniel is getting beaten up, and then Miyagi flies in to the rescue, and that confirmed a theory of mine that there is a gray line that you can beat up minors who deserve it. So he beats the hell out of them. And none of them are 18 because the all youth championship is under 18.
Yeah.
So he beats the crap out of a bunch of minors, and it's awesome. And we're all about it when it happens.
Yeah, it's very wish fulfillment-y to have the especially as an adult, to be able to I am
teenager.
I am fully justified to beat up these little kids.
Yeah. And
this podcast does not endorse the injury of minors.
Unless it's by Pat Morita.
Yeah.
And I thought too, like, before this happened, before Danny came into Miyagi's life, was he just looking around like, I have all these chores to do. When am I going to find a kid who needs mentoring? Because I have got to sand these floors. and
wax the car and paint the fence. And
I'm not.
Yeah, it's like that. So we're jumping a bit ahead, but that's another one of the most memorable things is Mr. Miyagi's untraditional training techniques, and I feel like the whole wax on, wax off thing, that's one of those things that kind of endures. I mean, Craig, you tell me, was that what were the things from Karate Kid that you knew before even watching the movie?
I knew a lot of it, and I had heard of wax on, wax off. I didn't really catch what it was about, except that I guess it's about training, and I guess he waxes a car for training. But exactly what the context was, where it's basically you do it so much that it becomes instinct, is really the
muscle
point.
memory.
Yeah. And so that you're defending yourself with this instinct that you've been doing it so much that you have to, you don't even have to think about it.
I think it wouldn't have hurt that he had prefaced that.
Yeah,
but he was also teaching. I think that would have helped, but I think he was also teaching Daniel to. Daniel was coming in with so much ego too. So much like a full head of steam that he kind of also needed to learn the lesson of just do what I say and trust me.
Yeah.
And he kind of needed to later explode to kind of get put into his place. That was its own lesson in addition.
And I love it. And I think every single lesson, me as an adult, as a kid, it just washes over you, because you're like, yeah. Everybody in the whole world is teaching me a lesson. But as an adult watching it, it's like, oh my God, no, the lessons are so meaningful. Like, wax on, wax off. You do a good job. You do it the right way. You don't give up or stop. And then the most important thing is balance. If your balance is good, everything's good. You look people in the eye. You don't fight just to fight. You don't fight to defend yourself. You fight for balance, And it's like, yes, I thought all of that held up so nicely. And even Miyagi standing up to the racist jack wagons at the beach was lovely. Like he and he has that confrontation with Kreese too, right? Where they go to the dojo where nothing exists except meanness and feathered bangs.
Meanness will only exist in this dojo.
Yes, Sensei.
In this dojo, we wear headbands, we have feathered blonde hair, and we are mean to each other.
I banish you back to the blow dryer.
They have that confrontation between Kreese and Miyagi where Miyagi's like, well, we'll just go talk to him and we'll like let him know that
and then me, who is about as emotionally mature as also Daniel. It's like, oh, that makes my skin crawl. There's no way I could just talk to him. you know, that's the worst thing ever.
And that guy's not having it. There is no moment where he's anything other than like, oh, you come into my dojo to try and talk some sense into the fact that I'm ruining these children. Like he wants to beat him up right there. It's like every
and he does kind of egg Miyagi just a bit into having to. Miyagi realizes that this cannot be resolved by simply talking, that they're going to have to make some sort of demonstration of joining this thing.
Right? That's balance. That's the balance, is like, if you can find a way to solve it, you solve it. But when you can't, that's why you paint the fence and sand the floor, is so that, you can put your waxed cars and painted fences where your money is. I don't know. I was trying to make a weird
right.
You can back it up and not be a victim.
Yeah. But I also think that Daniel is like, well, dude, I'm not gonna win this thing, and Miyagi goes like, yeah, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter. As long as you actually compete and earn some degree of respect from these people, they won't bully you ever again.
That was one of the unique things about the movie that I thought, because this is a very, very common, especially in the 80s storyline about the scrappy kid or the scrappy team of kids competing in something against arrogant bullies who are superior at them, but then they overcome everything. And the stakes in this movie are kind of weird, because throughout, I mean, deep down, he's going to win the tournament at the end. Daniel's going to win the tournament at the end. But throughout the movie, Miyagi's telling him, what's important. The only reason you're in this tournament is to prove that you are capable of holding your own. And don't worry about winning the tournament. And the stakes of just compete and do well in this tournament, and that's all you need to do. And you don't worry about winning is like it's almost like opposite of what a similar 80s movie would be, where, we need to win in order to get the reward so that we can save the church or whatever. So you have a secondary objective that requires winning. And in this case, it was like, by the time Daniel was like, we'll get into the end, but by the time it looked like Daniel was just going to get like runner-up status by default, and it's like, you've proven yourself already. The only reason you're out now is because they kind of cheated, but you've already demonstrated what you needed to do.
Okay, wait. So can we talk about that piece for a little bit, though? Because what happens at the tournament is that Daniel is doing so well that before he's even in the final bracket, Kreese is telling the trio of bullies to eliminate themselves from the competition, essentially by cheating and destroying. Like they
but basically doing an illegal move that gets them disqualified, but injures him so he can't move on.
What is that? Like, what is that? Like, it's like, okay, so there's no mercy. There's no nothing except, cheat.
Well, he treats them, he thinks of them as soldiers, and he is ordering one of them to make a sacrifice for the war, And
you see it in their eyes, like the kid who plays Johnny is like,
what?
They're like, oh, this is not what I signed up for, but they're so brainwashed that they're like, oh, I don't want to do this, but I'm going.
Well, it's you've got basically they've got their own father figure, which is Kreese, and they are bullies, but yet you also see the real people behind them not wanting to do what Kreese says when he raises up the stakes, and the level of commitment of what he believes, but yet, and I think this is realistic, they ultimately end up doing what he says because they feel pressured by this adult.
That's what I like, is that the other bullies, it's not like they're all indoctrinated into the bully philosophy of the dojo master. I don't even know his name, but they are
Crease.
well. Kreese is the head bully, but I'm talking
No,
about.
that's Johnny. That's Johnny.
Oh, yeah. Okay, never mind. But it's they're not indoctrinated into his no mercy thing as much as they are parroting what he says and obeying him because they're afraid of him.
Yeah.
And that kind of
Even
mindset
though he
of
clearly told them not to be.
yeah,
Right? There's no
Mhm.
fear in this dojo unless it is of me.
exactly, yeah. Do as I say, not. But yeah, it's this beta bully macho-ness that is the ultimate. I think the ultimate antagonist in this. You can kind of relate to the other kids desperately trying to. They're just trying to learn karate and be badasses, but now they have to get trained into basically being these suicide soldiers who have to sacrifice their honor. I can compete and I can win fairly, but instead
Mhm.
I've been
Mhm.
instructed to cripple this kid and get disqualified and basically get booed.
Yeah, and the kid who does that, who does injure his leg, as soon as he does it, he starts apologizing to Daniel, who's like
Yeah.
writhing on the ground in pain.
Exactly. He's
But
not
I
like
think also you get a little bit of how deep this toxicity goes in their lives when you meet the country club parents. Like Elizabeth Shue's parents are like out of a catalog, like right
Mhm.
down to the sweaters draped over their shoulders.
Encino's finest.
Yes. And they, oh my God, the most wonderful scene, which I completely blocked out of my memory and was so happy to re experience, was when Daniel and his mom go pick up Elizabeth Shue to go to the golf and stuff. And like they have to push the car.
to start it.
Oh my God. And I just like literally could not think of something more humiliating.
Oh yeah, that was so good.
And I love that the mom's just like, this is how we handle it when we're humiliated. Like we smile, we
I
stay cool.
really like the mom character in here.
Oh, me too.
I felt bad for her because about 2/3 of the way through the movie, she just completely disappears. There's even a point where it's like Daniel's birthday, a couple days before the tournament, and he's spending it with Mr. Miyagi, and then Mr.
Yeah.
Miyagi says something about like, it would be nice if your mom was here, and he's like, oh yeah, I forgot my mom, and I was like, so did the movie, and then
Yeah.
he was like, he starts to run off, and then Miyagi like gives him one of his cars, and he was about to go talk to his mom for his birthday, but then he got a new car. And so instead of going to see his mom,
Yep.
he starts cruising.
Yeah. Yep.
Which is like, oh, he forgot his mom again. And she shows
Yeah.
up at the end of the movie as like a fan, a spectator. But she
Well,
just kind of disappears. And it was like,
I wondered that too. I was like, when at the tournament, when Elizabeth Shue and Miyagi are the only people who are there, like behind the scenes with Daniel, I was like, why didn't his mom come to his karate tournament? And my 14-year-old was like, no, she's there. She's in the audience. And I was like, oh, okay. But so when you meet the parents at the country club, what you see of them, and especially in Elizabeth Shue's life, is that Johnny's at the country club too. Danny, he basically assaults her. You know, the parents force her to dance with Johnny, even though she's clearly said she does not want to. He like kisses her, even though she does not want him to, and makes it very clear that so she slaps him, standing up for herself and her own right to not be, mauled by this idiot. And her parents are like, oh my goodness, they apologize.
yeah, they're
Johnny.
like, they're huddled around Johnny, like, are you okay, Johnny? I'm sorry. She hit you.
You should be allowed to force yourself on her whenever. We're sorry. We don't know where she learned that. She should have rights.
The 80s.
So I'm curious. So Chrissy, what did your kids think of Karate Kid? Did they watch the whole thing?
Yes.
Have they seen it before?
They love it. So when Zoe was just at the right age for the Jackie Chan, Jaden Smith version of Karate Kid, and she loved it. And it's good. It's actually really good. In that version, they moved to Japan for the mom's job. And so he's, this young American kid who's living in Japan. So it's different enough and it's the same enough to be really, really good. So she loved that one and then wanted more. So we went back to the older ones. She's seen all of the Karate Kid movies except for the Hilary Swank one. And she is really into Cobra Kai, the series.
Mm-hmm.
She loves it. And so, she suggested that we watch Karate Kid. I was like, I gotta watch Karate Kid eventually. She's like, let's watch it now. I want to watch it. And then we'll watch Cobra Kai together and it'll be so fun. She loves it and she gets it. My son likes it too, but he's still a little bit more at the age where he's like just into the people kicking each other.
Get to the karate.
Yeah.
So Craig, this being your first time, what did you think of the movie as a whole?
Well, like I said, it wasn't a movie that was completely unknown to me. It was like I've been immersed in the culture of it being in the culture. So I knew the premise, I knew the plot, and it wasn't like a unique plot to be sure. It was one that you see a lot. You see it whether it's a youth hockey team basically going through the same thing. So I wasn't like
it's a sports
surprised.
movie.
Yeah, exactly. And it's like the first generation of that kind of sports movie. It's in the same era as Rocky, which like you said, it's basically Rocky for kids. So I didn't go in with any surprises. I went in with expectations that were met. Obviously, there were a lot of points that were like very 80s and very like meant for the 80s culture that weren't necessarily, I probably would have been more appealing to me as a kid than as an adult. And there's a couple of times when it is, the 80s culture, like for example, Johnny kind of forcing his tongue down the throat of Elizabeth Shue, and he's basically he knows he doesn't have a chance anymore, but he sees Daniel like in the kitchen watching, so it's like, oh, I'm just gonna like screw with him, and so that's like he's basically Frenching Daniel at this point, and then like her parents basically taking his side afterwards is like such a ridiculous concept from the 80s. The other thing I thought that felt a tinge of 80s was the material reward of Mr. Miyagi giving him a car. I mean, it was a sweet moment and it was sort of a bonding moment, but it felt like since it's the 80s, we need to show Daniel benefiting materially from his training and his loyalty to Mr. Miyagi, because all he gets at the end of the movie is a trophy. And
can we talk about the end of the movie just a little thing? Because so what happens is the karate, crane kick, and then the movie straight up just ends.
Just like Rocky. That's how Rocky movies would end. He would win, triumphant music, freeze frame, and then
we're done. Like
there's
there was no epilogue of any kind.
Yes, exactly. That's how those 80 movies went. It was just like once the big battle is won, as far as we're concerned, the movie is over. We don't need a resolution. We don't need to. We barely need to see him like giving a meaningful nod to Mr. Miyagi and hugging his girlfriend. But we don't need to say anything. We don't need to know
anything that happens afterwards. What? Like that was bizarre. I completely did not remember it being that way. I guess because there are so many sequels that you eventually get. You eventually get to see what happened next, but I completely did not realize that this movie is just like boop.
That's
it's a 2-hour movie.
That's the sports movie trope or not trope, but that's basically out of the classic ending of the sports movie is that you end on that high,
that ultimate high. Like the first 3 Rocky movies end exactly the same way. The fourth one ends with like a speech about, the U.S. and the Soviet Union being friends, but the other ones are all like, it's the athletes. They want to live forever in that moment of triumph, and therefore the movie will end in that moment of triumph.
Yeah.
But it's interesting. It doesn't end on a freeze frame of Daniel being joyous, it ends on a freeze frame of Mr. Miyagi and his approval.
Yeah.
It's the approval of the surrogate father.
Right.
Yeah, and I just thought that was so weird. And like I said, we find out what happened afterwards, which is that Kreese is so mad at Johnny for coming in second place that he basically, like, literally almost murders him.
Yeah, in the parking lot.
Yeah, it tears up the trophy. And then you've got
when Johnny has the balls to be like, I came in second place. That's not a bad thing. And he's like, you're disgusting. Like, second place is the worst thing you could be. Meanwhile, there are other people at this dojo. Like, the guy who came in fourth is like, okay, thanks.
Yeah, he's livid.
Yeah, but he lost on purpose, so he doesn't get beat up in the parking lot.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, it was weird. So it is a long movie with zero resolution. so weird. And I love too that at the tournament, Elizabeth Shue is the only one who knows how the tournament works. Like, we're lucky that she dated Johnny before this and had to go to some of his tournaments, I guess.
I was surprised when when they were registering for the tournament and they say, okay, what belt are you? And Miyagi's like, does it matter? What's the point of that? It's, well, we need to record it. Oh, then he is a black belt. Mm-hmm. And then he like secretly hands Elizabeth Shue his black belt.
They steal it
so that he has proof. He hands it to Elizabeth Shue, and then I thought, well, she's going to sneak into the locker room to give Daniel the black belt. No, he doesn't. He could have kept that belt because he doesn't put on the belt until later on when they're both there. Mm-hmm. I thought there was going to be this whole caper about Elizabeth Shue sneaking into the boys' locker room to get Daniel the black belt so he doesn't get disqualified for not actually having a black belt. Yeah. That was one of those plot points it felt like they almost, maybe that got cut for time, but it felt like there was going to be a whole thing that it just didn't go anywhere. And I was expecting it and it didn't happen. So I guess I was surprised, but not disappointed that they didn't have a whole sneaking through the locker room scene with Elizabeth Shue, because that would have dragged it out even more.
So what did you think, Craig, of the whole like crane kick situation? Like, that's obviously an iconic moment, but it just like boop, it happens and then it's done.
Exactly. It was like, I guess it was foreshadowed before. It was like, okay, here's the one move. It's an unbeatable move if you do it right. And so it's clearly the Chekhov's crane kick of the movie. That's how the movie's going to be won. So it was not at all unexpected. I was surprised at how I thought that was going to kind of be the centerpiece of the training, was that you need to do all of this to learn this one special move, this unbeatable move, and that's the only way you can win. Because this guy's he's stronger, he's faster.
You just line people up and just keep doing that kick. Get him in the hallway.
You only need one leg to do it. But it is like, I think it is like really like, because you have to make yourself vulnerable to do this move. Like, you have to like basically be defenseless except for one foot, so it is a risky move that I think someone from Cobra Kai would never bother to learn that move because it is vulnerable. And isn't that the point of everything? So I do want to talk a little bit about Cobra Kai.
The TV show.
The series.
Yeah. So originally it's season 1 and 2 were both on YouTube Red.
Yes.
And so YouTube was a very small studio, and you can kind of sense that with the first season that the budget was a bit lower than the second one because it was kind of a big hit.
Yeah, and I love the idea of it. Like, and it's such a thing that only something like a very low budget internet only movie studio would be, to be like, hey, like, let's call up this guy, and like, they're not doing anything. Let's get them on the horn and see if they want to like revisit these two characters as adults. I love it. I'm all for it. Like, I want to send a list of all the shows where I would like to revisit the characters as adults. Goonies, what are they up to?
Where are they now?
Yeah, show me what their
What are they
lives
eating?
like. as adults.
Yeah, I joked. It's like, oh, I love Crocodile Dundee. I'd watch just a movie of him like eating dinner with his family. That's basically what I got with Crocodile Dundee 3.
Yeah. Well, and that's what you get with Cobra Kai. Like you get that, like Danny LaRusso has a successful life. He has everything he wants and needs, but he's still struggling to be a good parent in the opposite way of is like, how do I parent in, a world of abundance where my kids want for nothing? Which is, I thought was like a really interesting twist. And then, you've got Johnny, the bad guy, who's like basically his life is garbage and he's still so filled with that toxicity that he can't escape it.
The thing that I was struck by was that Johnny is sort of the quintessential Peaks in High School character in general. And you I sense that in the original movie, and it gets played up in the series. The idea that basically things were going great for him, and then he lost this tournament. He came second in this tournament, and from then on, his life completely fell apart.
Yeah. And he had to have had means, like he was a member of the country club. The parents.
Yeah, exactly. His mom married rich. Like his dad died, just like Daniel's did, and so they both were kind of searching for that surrogate father. But his mom married rich, and so they suddenly had like this affluence.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess my only gripe with Cobra Kai, and this gets better in the second season, which I haven't finished yet, but I'm about halfway through, is that it's like Karate Kid was aimed for the kids of the 80s, but it was done by adults who didn't like kid movies. And so it had kind of a degree of realism to it, which I think a lot of 80s movies kind of did, at least for kids,
Yeah.
But with Karate Kid, with the season 1 of Cobra Kai, it's very much in the template of like a Disney show. You've got the characters, at least at the beginning, are very exaggerated. And you've got the teenage characters are kind of insufferable. and it happens at least 3 times to where one person walks in at the end of a scene, misinterprets what's going on, and gets really pissed, and now that's another fire that has to be kind of put out over a couple of episodes. So that kind of I love seeing the characters, but I also did kind of great on me personally was the kind of like Disney TV show soap opera, which, with season 2, a lot of that, I mean, the characters are still the characters, but a lot of that is not as prevalent for sure. You get a little more of seeing these people as people.
And that's what I want. I want to see them as people. Like, I don't want these contrived realities. I want to see this toxic weirdo struggle to like even get out from under Kreese again, and I want to see Daniel struggle being the positive person that he always was to, not everything happens easy, even if you have everything you want. Like there's still struggles. You never spike the ball, you never crane kick, and the movie ends. Like you still have to figure things out,
Yeah.
It as abruptly as the movie ends with the moment of triumph, and like with the way Cobra Kai starts, Danny's life is perfect. He has the perfect family. He has the best car dealership in the valley, and he is like a minor celebrity, and just like everything's come together for him.
Why does the whole entire city of Los Angeles know or care about?
Yes. Well, the valley is really kind of separate from Los Angeles, to be fair.
So dumb. Like everyone's like, what is that? What is with his whole crane kick bonsai thing? Oh, it's because of a karate tournament that happened 30 years ago.
Remember the 1984 karate tournament? Everyone remembers that.
Yeah, he's still hanging on to that. But oh my god, it was so weird.
They made a movie about it, for God's sake.
Yeah, sorry, Craig. I just had to point that out. I'm like, who cares?
That was basically my point too. That somehow this under 18 karate tournament 30 years ago completely made him as a person and as a celebrity here, and it destroyed Johnny.
Uh-huh.
Like they went completely opposite directions, and then for 30 years it was like out of a Disney movie how one's life went so great, the other's life went so terrible, and then now it's like someone turned off the Disney switch eventually so that it just powered down, and then it was like, oh, suddenly the great life has complications, and then
Yeah.
suddenly the terrible life, he's kind of coming out of it. It's just like, but they've for the last 30 years they've kind of been living in this sort of Disney karma,
Yeah.
where the hero gets rewarded for 30 years and the villain gets punished for 30
Yeah.
years. And now let's see what happens when we turn the switch off.
Mm.
And to be fair, it's the Valley.
Yeah, they're just weird.
But I do love it as a possibility to be like, let's see what happens next. Let's really tell a long form story about these characters.
Yeah.
So just for Karate Kid the movie, scale of one bonsai tree to 10. Oh wait, there's one
It's-
I just have
It's
to talk about real
bonsai
quick.
with an S.
Yeah, bonsai is a
Bonsai.
There's a moment when they're on the Halloween thing where Johnny's in the bathroom rolling a joint, right?
in the stall.
And he gets interrupted, of course. He doesn't get to smoke his drugs. But what would mellow high Cobra Kai be? What are those dudes like when they are chilled the fuck out? Like,
Yeah,
I wanted to see it.
If Daniel had waited for his prank 10, 15 minutes later, you might have been, oh, that was so hilarious, man. You're pretty cool. We should be friends.
Yep.
Instead, he
that
gets beaten
sounds
to
very
within
real.
an inch of his life. So
Yep. Okay, so one wax on to 10 wax offs. That's not a good way to phrase things. How do you rate this movie? Craig, let's start with you since you're freshest.
Okay. Since I was seeing it for the first time as an adult, but perceiving it all my life in a secondary nature, I guess I did have a different perspective, and I didn't have the backup of nostalgia to make me have the same fond memories I think you two did. So as a result, it felt largely to be a by the numbers 80s movie to me. Not bad. It was well executed for what it was. But I didn't have the shoring up support of having the nostalgia. So I would give it a 6 bonsai trees out of 10.
Wow. Okay. What about you, Nathan?
I'm going to give it an 8.5 because Craig is wrong and should always be unhappy.
Ooh.
Oh,
Yeah, no, I just think it's as the kid Rocky. I just think that it's not flawless, but I think it really works. In terms of and maybe there's certainly I concede that I'm sure a lot of nostalgia is working for me as well, but I just think structurally, other than maybe kind of a slow start, that a lot of it just really works. I really like how well the characters are handled, how well the philosophy of what Mr. Miyagi is trying to push is handled. I like some of the complications of the characters. And so that's what I've said.
I think I'm with you for once. 8.5.
For once,
right? We almost never agree. Because I do think it holds up in all of the ways that looking back at these movies forces us to ask ourselves. It is rewatchable. It is still meaningful, and it holds up without the nostalgia factor. I think because my kids like it, and they not only like it, they want Cobra Kai. They want to know what's going to happen to
Mm-hmm.
Danny and Johnny. So I think that it hits all of the buttons, and the only reason I wouldn't score it higher is because it's too long, and there are parts of it that we definitely.
It's under 2 hours.
It's the only problem. Its only flaw is that it's too long and boring.
Yeah,
Right.
It's long, it's the boring parts. And there are like little plot holes here and there that are I'm just like ugh.
I was wondering what happened to the old lady who was from New Jersey. I thought she was going to be a character in the movie at the beginning, and then
Nope.
she's never heard from again. It was like
Yep.
I lost threads, or the
Right.
friend he just met. Like,
So you
did he
wanted
win
the
friend
movie
back?
shorter, but you wanted more of the old lady.
Yeah. Well,
So some fun facts. Miyagi, the actor Pat Morita, designed the bonsai logo. He designed it.
Mm.
And Elizabeth Shue was at Harvard, and she was like, "I will take a break from Harvard to be in your karate movie as the girlfriend." This movie came in number 4 overall for 1984. So it's beat all the other movies that we've done. Ghostbusters is number 1, Temple of Doom, and then Gremlins and Karate Kid. Romancing the Stone came in number 10 that year. Red Dawn number 19, and Friday the 13th number 22.
What a year.
So what is your
84.
deep cut recommendation based on Karate Kid, and like knowing that it can't be Cobra Kai? This is a deep cut, not an obvious.
Well, I can't go. My honest recommendation would be, and it's not very deep, is the second Karate Kid.
Oh.
I
can't name a sequel.
Listen, you're a guest in this house. It literally picks up right after. So you really honestly, like, if you love the Karate Kid, there's 3 directions you could go to. It's Cobra Kai, it's Karate Kid 2, or it's most likely not the Jaden Smith Karate Kid. Most likely you went the other way, you started there and then you discovered the original Karate Kid. Mm-hmm. So, I feel like I remember, it's been a while since I've seen the Karate Kid 2, but I remember it holding up. I could be wrong, but what I really liked about it was that it focused a lot, not on Daniel, but on Mr. Miyagi. And kind of understanding him and his home life, and realizing that he came from kind of he came from Okinawa, and he came from basically a village of that he's faced similar kind of pressures and bullies like Daniel did. And now, as an older man, having to kind of reconcile a lot of those relationships.
Okay.
So,
what about for you, Craig?
Well, I didn't know sequels would be a thing. Maybe I should just recommend Karate Kid 3 then.
Craig's greatest and final appearance on The Most Excellent.
Bridges Burned. Yes. Normally what I try to do with my recommendation, my deep cut recommendation, is to find an aspect of the movie that struck me personally and try and go off of that rather than going off of something similar. The thing, the aspect that I really connected with in this movie was in the beginning, the isolation Daniel felt being the new kid in town, and basically starting to make friends and then losing them, starting to flirt with the girl and then getting humiliated in front of her and then having a bully on you and then just feeling that alienation, like you don't belong here and you need to go home, you need to get away, and there's just nothing for you here. So I was trying to think of something that I could put that would be profound. Is there like something from Socrates or Emily Dickinson or something that I can recommend? And no one's going to read that stuff. So instead, my recommendation is going to be Chuck Norris facts.
Jesus.
Go back and read some Chuck Norris facts again, and that will make you smile and vaguely think of the Karate Kid.
Those were fun. Those were fun times. We were so innocent.
Can't wait to have you back on the show.
Yeah.
Redeemed.
I love that. So there's one thing I forgot to point out in this movie too, and that wonderful iconic he's dressed as a shower costume dance that the school has. Everyone is really committed to their costumes, and I wish that were true. Like, I wish that you could throw a costume dance for high school kids and that everyone would wear a costume. That is a piece of the world that I really truly wished existed. So I'm going to recommend, I guess, sticking with that feeling of the very serious class divides and such. And I'm going to recommend The Outsiders, which is an 80s movie that we have somehow not done, which is so good. And Ralph Macchio plays one of the main characters in it. And his character in it is so lovable and important. And of course, everybody's in this movie. It's Patrick Swayze, Tom Cruise's first movie, Emilio Estevez is in it. Like, literally everybody is in this movie. And if you haven't seen it, you should. It's very much about the greasers and the Socs and how they can't have their Romeo and Juliet relationship, and the prices that come with it. So that's my recommendation. Okay. Where, Craig, can people find all of your various novels and sundries?
Okay, well, you can see any of my novels on Amazon.com, BarnesNoble.com. If you have any interest in learning more about me and my writing, I have a Facebook page, and Craig Michael Curtis, and also CraigMichaelCurtis.com is my webpage.
Excellent. And for you, Mr. Blackwell?
SquishyStudios.com is apparently where I put my stuff. Our most recent project is still Star Saga, which we just finished pre-pandemic. But we've been working on a scripted radio series, which we'll probably be releasing in a few months. And that'll probably be on its own podcast channel. We'll definitely let people know when it's available. And we'll also put up on our Squishy Studios website and our Facebook.
Yay! I'm very excited for that. You can find me at nctphoenix.com, and you can find more information about this episode and episode post at mostexcellentpod.com. Thank you so much for listening. Like, rate, review, thumbs up, star, all of those things. I know it's like you hear this at the end of every single podcast that you ever listen to, if you make it that far, and it's like one of those things you intend to do one day and like never get around to. But for a little podcast like ours, it really does make all of the difference between people finding us. So do take the time if you can. We appreciate you. And hey, while you're out there finding the time to like and rate and review podcasts, remember to keep the Most Excellent 80s Movies podcast motto in mind. Be excellent to each other and...
Party on, dudes!
Party on, dudes!
Party on, dudes. Give them a body bag!
Yay!